Good afternoon. My name is Luciana Brown, and I want to welcome you again to another segment, Poppin' with Poppin'. We are discussing IDEA all week long, as well as of our other workshops on best practice and inclusive education, as well as supportive decision making. And also, you may hear something about parents as leaders. And so, again, I'm Luciana Brown, the Multicultural Outreach Coordinator, Interim Director for Poppin'. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I know some of you have already probably looked at the introduction and 4 parts and a couple of other of our IDA workshops that we featured this week. And so today we will be discussing RTI, which stands for Response to Intervention. And so I want to thank you for tuning in. We will be discussing progress monitoring and multi-tiered system support, and also what that means and how you can find out more about it. So welcome. Before I begin, I want to remind some of you, as well as to some of those that are just tuning in, we are a 501(c) nonprofit organization under Family Network on Disabilities, which was started in 1985 by a group of parents of individuals that had children and young adults with special needs that came together for support and resources. And so here we are today doing the same thing. We are located in North Florida. Poppin' is located in North Florida, but FND has several programs that covers the whole state of Florida, and I'm actually going to talk about those at the end of this workshop. And so something that we do is we take a lot of calls from parents that just want information, want resources, want to know information about IEPs and 504s, as well as we link them to resources. And one of the things that we do not do is we do not do any kind of diagnosis. We're not doctors, we're not lawyers. So we basically just link you with resources because we want you to have the information so you can make the best decision for your child. So welcome again to Response to Intervention and Progress Monitoring and Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. So in 2004, a change in educational thinking brought about RTI, which stands for Response to Intervention for short, a framework that many schools use to help students who are struggling in academics. Congress acted on concerns about the increasing number of students in special education and suspensions that many students currently classified as having a specific learning disability might have avoided the need for special education if instructional support and interventions had sooner been provided to them. And so we're going to touch bases on what that means and the changes that have came. So a little progress each day adds up to big results. So you may say, why specific IEP progress monitoring is so important? The Individuals with Disability Education Act requires school districts to monitor progress on goals in individuals' education programs, IEPs, for students with special education needs. Progress monitoring is the scientifically based practice specifically measuring progress regarding a specific area of need. Unfortunately, many school districts are not appropriately monitoring these progresses, and we are hoping that, as time gets more and more involved, parents get more involved, these changes will continue to get better. And so they're not monitoring the progress of the student's IEP goals. So without appropriate progress monitoring, there's no way of knowing whether the student is making progress or whether they're not making progress, what help they need and what help they don't need. So it's very important that this gets done. And so you have universal design of learning. So the active networks are why we think, why we learn, what we learn, and how we learn. So with progress monitoring, is first the essential to have measurable IEP goals with baselines upon which progress is monitored. So this means that IEP goals need to include what is actually being measured, reading comprehension or attention tasks, how long it's being measured, the performance and standardized assessments in reading comprehension or minutes attended before distracted. It could also mean where the students is functioning upon initial implementation of the goal. that method by progress is monitored extremely important in ensuring that the accurate and appropriate progress monitoring is occurring. So more specific methods for measuring progress must include objective measuring of specific goals. And so more of a specific information must be provided regarding methods being used for measuring progress. For an example, simply stating data collection is insufficient. So if you see that, ask a question and be more specific about what data is collected. And so rather the specific means by which data will be collected should be provided, such as who will be collecting the data, how the data will be collected, how often the data will be collected, and under what circumstances the data will be collected. And so it's very important that parents are involved, because you want to make sure, like I said earlier, you are the biggest advocate for your child. And so parents need to carefully review their IEP goals, including how the child's progress is being measured, how they are being provided the progress, whether it's on the report card or whether it's weekly progress reports, monthly progress reports. If you don't understand as a parent what is being done, always ask questions, because you want to know what level your child is currently functioning on, how is it being measured, what's being measured, and will there be reports provided to the parents, and to seek clarification. And I always tell my parents, if you can get this in writing, whether it's by note, whether it's by email. I like the fact that my teacher, my son's teacher, has Dojo. So any type of verification in writing to make sure you not only keep a track record of information that you've been receiving, but so you can go back, because I tend to look over information that have been received to me, and then I go back and research it a little bit more so I can have a better understanding. So response to intervention and multi-tier system support. Being informed about MTSS process within the school is first step to becoming an active partner. One of the primary differences between MTSS and traditional service delivery models is the use of levels of instructional support to flexibility group students according to the need. Having instructional tiers ensures proper support for each student, because schools are able to match more intensive instruction and resources to the students with more intense needs, and less intensive instruction and resources to the students with less intensive need. So you want to make sure that you understand what your child needs and what your child doesn't need, having that information and really going through it, asking questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no dumb question. There's no question that doesn't make any sense, because when you don't understand something, the only way you can understand is ask. So a framework that many schools use to help students who are struggling with academics, this was before MTSS, Congress acted on concerns about the increasing number of students in special education and suspicion that many students currently classified as having a specific learning disability might be avoided. So the RTI process begins with high quality instructions and universal screening of all children in the general education classroom. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what I was talking about earlier. And so you have here, if you can see, it's a 3-tiered educational approach. And so it's aimed at early identification and support of students in both general and specific education where progress is being monitored closely. So one of the primary differences between MTSS and traditional service delivery models is the use of levels of instructional support to flexible group of students according to their need. So having instructional tiers ensures proper support for each student according to what their needs are. So it's designed for use when making decisions both general education and special education. So these services may be provided by a variety of personnel, including general education teachers, special education teachers, as well as specialists. And so tier 1, which is the general curriculum, this is 100% students. And so the implementing well research programs and practices demonstrated to produce good outcomes for the majority of students. So within MTSS, all students receive core instruction as the foundation for learning. It's also called universal design learning. And so with this approach, goals, materials, methods, and assessments are firmly grounded in the belief that every other learner is unique and brings different strengths and weaknesses to the classroom. So schools may use different curriculums, such as I know my son does Go Math. They were using, I can't think of the reading that they use for practice, but different curriculums are used in presenting that core instruction. So it's expected that 80% of our students will make adequate progress with this core instruction. So with Tier 2, this is students who struggle to get more support. So 15 to 20% of these students. And so to achieve benchmarks, Tier 2 effectively, if at least 70-80% of students improve performance. And so those students at risk for academic failure on the basis of their performance on screening assessments are then provided supplement support. The first layer of additional support, Tier 2, occurs outside of the time dedicated to the core instruction in groups of 5 or 8. And so that focuses primarily on providing increased opportunities to practice and learn skills taught in core. So you may have a time where certain amount of students are pulled together to do reading or to do math. Other schools provide tier support with computer programs, labs. So if 80% of our kids are making adequate progress with core instruction, that means 20% are not gaining enough. So Tier 2 is this to provide support to those students that are not gaining those supports. So regardless of the method, it's expected that the majority of those students getting Tier 2 support will make adequate support with Tier 2. So Tier 3 is an extensive instruction. This is 5% of the students. So effective, if there is a progress gap closing towards benchmark and progress monitoring goals, these students will fall into this category. So compared to Tier 2 and 3, is more explicit focus on remediation skills. So diagnosis assessments are given to pinpoint why students are not learning, and a plan is created for how to intervene. Support is given appropriately in a setting that's no larger than 1 to 3 students. And it's also sometimes a 1-to-1 ratio when possible. So it's also provided for a longer duration of time with 1 and 2. With 2, you may find kids get pulled off to the side. With Tier 3 is a longer duration of support. So Tier 3 is considered an intense level of instruction, and there will be no more than 5% of general student population needing this level. It's vital that Tier 3, the teacher be specific to the student's need. For example, if you have a child that's weak in reading and diagnostics shows that he or she has excellent phonics skills but poor vocabulary, vocabulary should be the focus of the level point of instruction. So now that you've heard what you heard, the information gathered through progress monitoring is used throughout the progress to make important instructional decisions about your student. So to implement progress and monitoring, the student's current levels of performance are determined and goals are identified for learning that will take place over time. The student's academic or performance, behavior performance is measured on a basis. It could be weekly, it could be bi-weekly, it could be even monthly. So progress towards meetings, the student's goals is measured by comparing expected and actual rates of learning. Based on these 3 measurements, teachers normally adjust. And so whatever method of progress monitoring the school decides to use is important to make sure it's scientific based and that the research that is significantly supported by significant research. So progress monitoring information should be shared with the student wherever possible. Having students graph their data can help them understand the progress that they're making and improve motivation, because if they're working on something and they're already having issues or challenges, if they see their self progressing, it'll promote them to want to continue to work. And so if Tier 3 is not successful, a psychoeducational evaluation and ESE testing is then the next step. And so evaluations are warranted. Schools should adjust the information further and continue with an intensive level of support. So if a child's not making adequate progress despite the intensive individual amount of support, it's likely that an evaluation is done to see if there's a learning disability, intellectual disability. It could be a language impairment or some other type of disability. So if the evaluation is requested, schools should adjust the instruction further and continue with an intensive level of support while waiting for the evaluation to be complete. And this also requires parents to be involved, student signature. So going through this process first with RTI and MTSS kind of rules out whether or not the child may need an evaluation, and that could be requested at any time. So the multi-tier system of support, you may find response to intervention, positive behavior intervention support in that area, professional development, curriculum design, teamwork, parent action, school and community collaboration. All of these require us to be a part under that umbrella. So when you get down to what really it is, just make sure that all children are being taught at their level so everyone can grow, because that's the most important thing. So that umbrella includes all those segments that I just mentioned. It also covers social and emotional support as well as additional services and additional resources maybe outside of school to help with that support. And so continuum of impact of student achievement, schools are encouraged to spend their time in the higher impact activities around family engagement. So given all of this, we define family engagement as the collaboration between families, educators, and accelerate student learning. And so based on this definition, research about what supports learning enables the relationship between families and schools to have conversations. We have clustered typically family engagement strategies across the continuum. So we have a higher impact and we have a lower impact. So with the lower impact, you will want to call random acts of parent involvement. These are oftentimes events focused on getting parents to show up at school, giving them a broad information service. I know last year and this year, one of the schools in Leon County actually had a parent involvement day where they had a lot of different workshops, breakout workshops. They had information section. And so that was really fun to attend. And they also had resources for the parents. So at a higher impact end of the family spectrum, you'll see family engagement strategies are tied to instructional core of the school. These strategies are more student specific and individualized in their approach. Both family engagement and partnerships are designed to help schools implement some of these higher impact strategies in their school. So some of the questions parent might ask to learn about MTSS work, we may ask, how does the school determine that all students are receiving high quality instruction? If large number of students are not making acceptable progress, the instructional program should be examined. You may also ask your school, if you want to know more about it, what screening procedures are used to identify students in need of intervention. You may also ask what interventions are used and what instructional programs are being used. Ask about research. Also ask about the process that goes on. Also ask about the length of time, because if you have a child that has issues with time, ask what length of time is allowed for an intervention to be done before determining if a student is making progress. So those are some of the questions that you can ask. Ask about the teacher, ask about who will be doing the testing, ask about the process, how long it happens. And one thing that you make sure that you can ask is, what if that intervention doesn't work? Do you automatically go to getting an evaluation, or do they try something different? Ask about who is responsible for your child and implementing the different goals and assessments. What screening procedures, there's so many different questions that you can ask. Ways that you can support the school is you can ask, how does the school determine that all students are receiving what they need? Is it in a smaller classroom? Is it in a bigger classroom? So those are some of the questions that you can ask to make sure that you understand the process of RTI, the process of MTSS. Ask about the data. If your child is already receiving special education service, how can RTI and MTSS help? So those are some of the questions that you can ask to kind of make sure that you have a full understanding of what information is done, what procedures are done, how will it help your child? Would this cause your child to have more stress, cause them to have more issues, challenges? Those are some of the things that you can ask. So what I've discussed for you is the procedure for response to intervention and multi-tile system of support. I hope that is giving you a brief overview of that part of IDEA. And if you have any questions, you can always email us or me at Luciana, LUCIANA, at fnd.org. Or you can reach out to our home office at 1-800-825-5736. Again, we cover the whole state of Florida. We have Poppin, which is in the North region. We have PSN, which is Parent Support Network, which is in Central. We have PEN, Parent Educating Network, which is in South Florida. We have our Family Star program, which help parents that have children with specific health care needs. And we also have our F&D Trust Services. So I hope that this program, this workshop, has given you more information on RTI and MTSS. I hope that it's giving you a little bit of confidence about when you go into the school, what questions you can add, how does the system work, how does it go, and so that you can be a little bit more prepared. And if you need a copy of this presentation, please don't hesitate to email me. Again, we also have F&D University, where you can go in and take lots of courses to get a greater understanding on a subject in special education. So again, I thank you for tuning in to another segment on IDEA. Again, tune in with us on Friday for our next presentation. Thank you and have a great day.